Hey, this is Todd. Welcome. I am happy to have Brandon from Wet Ink Games here to talk about all kinds of good stuff. Sorry about the delays and the glitches. I'm pretty sure it was totally my fault. Par for the course. But I'm glad you hung in there, Brandon. How are you? How was your holiday season
Oh
so
man,
far?
it's good. I have this week off from the day job, so just playing catch up, getting some sleep, get some work done.
Awesome, awesome. So, as I mentioned, we only had the briefest of moments to chat before I went live. But what's your kind of gaming story? How did you get into role playing games? How did you get from wherever you started to wherever you are now?
Oh man, so like like a lot of people, my gaming history starts from uh, playing a lot of early games with friends in middle school. Excuse me, friends in middle school. My first game I ever played was the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Palladium Books.
Oh wow.
And I played that in sixth grade. I absolutely loved it. The first game that I ever bought was the Robotech from Palladium Books. And so yeah, just one of those things that I got to play some really cool stuff and was introduced to a lot of nerd culture and everything pretty early on. Um, as I grew up, I played D&D second edition, 3.5, up through high school and college, as well as playing riffs and some of the other Palladium Books games. And then in 2004, when I was in college, I ended up going to Origins with some of my buddies in my gaming group, where I actually got to meet Kevin Simbita from Palladium when I was, when I was there. And I was like, oh yeah, I have some ideas of stuff I want to do. And um, he actually he was a great guy to talk to. Actually, you see this, where is it, this Galactus figure right there? It's the Hero Clicks Galactus that was actually convention exclusive that year, and I was doing some work for WizKids as one of their convention volunteers, and I was able to buy that convention exclusive Galactus. And Kevin had mentioned in passing, oh, that'd be really cool to to pick one of those up. Well, I had um, recently sold my entire RPG book collection
Oh
because
man.
of a girl. She was down in Mexico doing a study abroad, and I was like, I'm going to go visit her. So I sold like everything that I had, to go down there, and so I traded him that Galactus figure. I was like, sure, I have one in the car. So, and he pretty much gave me every book that they had in their catalog and a
Wow.
whole
And
bunch
that's a
of other
lot.
stuff.
They put out a lot of books.
Oh yeah, it's this whole wall right here. Like,
That's an
and
interesting place to start, Palladium. Because I
yeah,
mean,
it.
usually, how did you end up? How did that be your starting point as opposed to D&D or something similar?
I mean, just from the fact that that's where I had some buddies who were playing it, and back in the early '90s, I mean, it was really it was pretty popular. I mean, the TMNT RPG really put them on the map. And one thing that is really awesome with about Palladium from an experience standpoint is the fact that they are a very art forward book, or company. They've been for a while. Kevin got a lot of his experience as an artist for Judges Guild and for some other things. But I mean, you look at some of those covers. The original Riffs cover that was done by Keith Parkinson. They've had some amazing cover artists over the years. I mean, hell, I think the original TMNT cover was actually done by Peter Eastman.
I mean,
Um,
the art is beautiful. I mean, to tell you my experience with the Rifts, I've never actually played Rifts, but I back in the day, I owned probably a half a dozen to a dozen Rifts books,
Kevin Eastman,
essentially
sorry.
using all the art and stuff for my friend's homebrew sci-fi game. But
Yeah,
whenever we needed inspiration for stuff, it was like, let's see what Rift books are out. So
yeah,
all that
yeah,
stuff got into the game, even though I really couldn't tell you how to play or anything about the actual Rifts, mechanical system.
and see,
They were
that's the
just
thing
wonderful
too,
books.
because I kind of grew up with it, and then had people had said, oh well, there's all of these issues with a rule here and a rule there, and it actually helped me for my own game mastering, for my own writing and game development and design. It's that, all right, well, I don't want to make things overly complicated, and I don't necessarily want people um, to have to be, completely roadblocked by a rule. Also, when I go to convention games or run convention games or anything like that, I run really fast and loose. Someone says, "Hey, I want to do that," and I'm like, "Sure, cool. Let's figure out how we're going to do that." And I may get rules lawyered by someone at the table, but I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm going to let the story progress."
Yeah,
Um,
especially in a con game. Like, have fun.
exactly.
Well, you only got a day
Right.
or so. You have 4
Like
hours.
I teach you the core mechanics of the game enough, for you to at least get interested in it. But we're going to tell a story together. The cool thing is, with all of my experience and everything there, I did 2 internships with Palladium when I was in graduate school, and so I got to learn a lot of firsthand things from them. I have some great experience with the company and with the people who work there or have worked there in the past. You look at our very first book that we did, Wild Skies. Wild Skies Europa Tempest, like the cover, again, taking a cue from Palladium. It's very art forward,
Mm.
but we come by our original like Palladium DNA. I mean, it shows. It's 2 column, black and
Oh
white,
yeah.
blah blah blah. So I'm like,
Absolutely.
yeah, that very first book that we ever put out, I was like, oh yeah. I mean, we wear that on our
I mean,
sleeve in that
look,
book.
how many of us, I own, what is it? I have, what's it, the font Souvenir, the basic expert font. Like, I
Mm,
own so I
yep,
mean, everyone, you pick up these things from the books you've had in front of you.
and
I can't even say how many OSR, whatever I've opened up and like, oh, there's the Souvenir font. They're the same font that
yep,
we've all bought.
we've
It's
all
cool
been
to see
there.
Palladium come up because it's just something that is as an influence and just having worked there, you just don't hear about it. So, I mean, for as much as I mean, I obviously I don't know numbers or anything like that, but I feel like
Yeah,
as far as footprints in the gaming stores back in the day, they had as big a footprint for different Palladium products as
oh yeah,
anything that was out there. I mean, probably TSR slash whatever. Well, Wizard of the Coast maybe had the biggest one, but I mean, just
yep,
oodles and oodles of Palladium. But you don't really hear it a lot. You don't, I'm a lot often in OSR circles, and you don't hear people calling back to, hey, you know what I want to
oh
bring
yeah.
back? Rifts. Um,
And you actually have a lot of people who, because I had all those connections and everything. I'd been going to Gen Con with Palladium for years as a volunteer, helping them out, helping sell. And Kevin has done he's been very helpful as we've created Wet Ink games and moved forward. I know that I could always call him if hey, I have a question about such and such. Now, of course, there's going to be, he says, well, this is what I would do, but I'm not telling you exactly how to do things. He's always someone to bounce ideas off of sometimes. But as we've grown and we've still maintained friendly relationships with pretty much everyone we've ever worked with. Um, and Palladium and Kevin being or notwithstanding. Now there's again, I showed you Wild Skies. The art in that book, the logo, the Wild Skies logo, even the Wet Ink Games logo, these were things that, because of the connections that I had at Palladium, I knew Chuck Walton, who did the cover and some of the interior art. I knew Mike Muma, who did a lot of the interior art. Amy Ashbaugh, who did some of the interior art. I made all of these connections. Brian Manning is the one who actually designed the logo, and they did this stuff on spec because it was our first product. We said we're going to launch this on Kickstarter. We're going to see if this goes, and we funded our first thing, and we had line items in each one of those, and all of those artists were like, that's cool, we'll do this on spec, and we'll help you kind of get your foot out there. Kevin actually would put um, you know links to our Kickstarter and his weekly updates and in the newsletter and on their website. So it was really cool and really helpful to see some of that stuff happen. And then we were able to kind of establish our own fan base. We were able to have a variety of new products that came up. We've had a number of wildly successful Kickstarters. But again, it all comes down for us in Wet Ink. Um, we want to make sure that we not only have good ideas that people want to play, but we want to work with artists and treat and respect our artists extremely well. Um, that's that. It's just it goes hand in hand.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
your
I mean,
horror store.
it's a good. I mean, it is something to point out, right? Because it is one of those things. I think. I mean, like any creator trying to break in, it's so easy to end up in this trap where you're just giving your stuff away for free, or you're basically saying, and people will knowingly or not take advantage of the fact that you're an artist and you want to get in something, so you're willing to do whatever. And some folks will be like, "Hey, great, give it to me." So it's really nice to hear that that's something you take care of because the value of really good artwork. Oh, hey, look at that. We got. I was wondering when the chat was going to start to catch up because I know with the URL switch, I'm sure a lot of people are sitting in the other stream going, "Hey, what's going on?"
What's
So
going
hopefully,
on here?
I posted in the YouTube chat. So hopefully people will get over. But
So
um,
that you see in chat, that's Matt Benici, who's he did all of the layout and graphic work for Zhongsha Blood in the Banquet Hall, and he's working with us on our upcoming Heckin' Good Doggos RPG. Absolute awesome graphic designer. Did a lot of work, I think, with Kids on Bikes, and he's done stuff all over the
mm.
industry. So the fact that he thinks we're a pleasure to work with, that's awesome. I will take that. High five.
So where do you want to start things? So how many books do you guys have? I'm just actually scrolling down.
Oh man.
I know you guys have Into the Wyrd and Wild, which is kind of how I first heard of you. And
Hmm.
then when I caught up with you guys at PAX, I caught sight of Never Going Home, which I looked
Yep.
at yesterday partially. Didn't get through it. I have to finish it. And then Tenebria, which I haven't broken in yet, looks awesome.
Yeah.
And then I'm just looking at you also have obviously Wild Skies, which you met before, and then well in the banquet hall.
Yep.
Um,
So we started with our first book, which was Wild Skies Europa Tempest, which is anthropomorphic dieselpunk sky pirates in the skies over 1930s Europe. All right. We always, when we're at conventions or whatever, we're kind of giving our pitch. We say if you take Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow and Disney's Tailspin and just smash them together, that's the game. Um, which, a lot of times if people are looking for diesel punk stuff and you say that, they're like, oh, that's fantastic.
totally.
And the fact that Matt Orr, who's my business partner and longtime friend, and he's our creative director, he also has a degree in history and a master's in history education. So you'll notice a theme in a lot of our games, especially when looking at Wild Skies. We wanted to have a plausible history and have our divergence point, at some point in the early 20th century. So we were able to do that. But the history of the setting in each one of our countries is all pretty plausible, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, and I did notice it just not to jump ahead to Never Going Home, but
yeah,
reading the dedications at the beginning
yeah,
of the book it gave me the sense that you guys weren't just you were treating it with a little bit more than just like, oh, this is going to be a fun, like, oh, World War Weird just kind of running off. And like you guys were, referencing, relatives and obviously the folks who had to live through that hellish thing, as
yeah.
bad as it is in our world, let alone what it's like in the world of Never Going Home. Definitely gave me the sense that, like, okay, you guys are looking at this with a little bit more, maybe attention to that stuff than some other products that just going to jump on something and just kind of go.
And and that's a common theme. We're actually continuing with that in our game development. Um, because you're right, like the we wanted to keep that um keep the history and historical settings and everything pretty plausible. Like you just look at, or the follow-up book to Wild Skies was um we had Europa Tempest, and then we had gosh, Liberating Strife, which was the America book, which um and so we had that. We followed that up with Tenebria, or I'm sorry, with Never Going Home. And that first launch, we that was based off the art of Charles Ferguson Avery, um, and he had done an original art book where it was based on his Inktober, you know, just art gallery. He was trying to stretch himself, just doing some new doodles every day in October. He turned it into an art book called World War Occult. We licensed that art from him to do Never Going Home, and we had maintained a relationship with Charles for a while. And Still have a good relationship with Charles. And
Did he do the cover for Never Going Home? Because that's really a
he
really
did all
cool
of the
piece.
art for Never
Oh,
Going
okay.
Home. He didn't just didn't do the cover. So we licensed the art from him, and then had him do a whole bunch of other new art for Never Going Home. That Kickstarter blew up well beyond what we originally thought, which turned it into um, Never Going Home, the Tome of Corrupted Beasts, which is our kind of bestiary for the setting, the Book of Whispers, which is like a magic book for the setting, and Once More Under the Breach, which was a book of all adventures written by people all over the indie game industry. Eric Bloat from Bloat Games, Doug Lewandowski, Crystal Mazer, just people all over the place had written for that line just on that original Kickstarter. We did a second Kickstarter because so many people wanted. I mean, we had all those missions and everything, and they wanted a series of them. So actually, full connected adventures. So we
Oh,
did a
kind of like
second
a more of
Kickstarter.
a like an adventure path or sort of a
Yeah,
campaign.
like an adventure path for Pathfinder. And so we had Tears in the Sea, which is naval combat in the North Sea on a Geiger-esque U-boat that ate its former
Ooh.
crew. We had a Blood on the Snow, which is the lead up to the Russian Revolution with a demonic Rasputin, and then we have a third called Bones in the Dust, which is hunting eldritch artifacts during the Battle of Gallipoli.
Oh,
And
wow.
again, with each one of those, again, since the historical elements are pretty much key to our setting, we worked with a World War I scholar who wrote the fiction in the letters. Like you look at Never Going Home, all of the letters and everything, those are all written by a World War I scholar. Some of the fiction elements were written by that person as well.
They're really
And
nice, really evocative.
yeah, and so that's was very important to us. Tenebris is the same way. Someone else had approached us and said, "We love the system of the +1 system that's used in Never Going Home. Can I use that for a different game?" And they pitched us Tenebria and showed us some art. And so Stephen Wu, who did all of the art and the writing for that game, uh, we were like, "Sure, this sounds great," and just delivered such a fantastic product. He's such a uh, disgustingly talented individual.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I
To,
mean, the writing and the art. I mean, the art is. I haven't
yep,
had a chance to read it yet, but yeah, the art's pretty epic. So there's my
yeah.
copy.
And he did I think the very first thing he showed us. There's in that book was this barbarian who's in the forest is just covered in fire, and he's getting ready to hack a Roman legionnaire. And then the second one was the aqueduct image that's in that book. Both of those were absolutely stunning, and we were like, "Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. Like, here's the aqueduct image." Uh,
Oh yeah, that's really nice.
and that was like the second piece he ever showed us, and I was like, "Yeah, do whatever you want. You can, yeah." And he that actually led to him doing a bunch of work for us as well in Zhongsha Blood in the Banquet Hall.
Nice.
Yeah.
So was Never Going Home your first game with that +1 system, or had you done things with that prior to Never Going Home?
So yeah, Never Going Home is the first game in the +1 system. We used a lot of our the things that we learned from doing the compass system design, which is what's used in Wild Skies Europa Tempest. We we did a lot of things in that book that we really love. The system is a lot of fun, but it is a much crunchier system than something else. So we said when Matt and I sat down, we said, okay, we want to do a horror game set in World War One based on Charles art. All right, so uh, we love Charles art. It's going to be, we're going to promote that. It's going to be push that always to the front, and it's going to take whatever we do, and it's going to take it to a next level. Then um, the horror game. We know that horror games in the industry, they generally sell well. So from a business decision, and we didn't have a horror game anywhere in development at the time, that was let's go on and dive in and try that. And we wanted it to be accessible. So Never Going Home uses standard six-sided dice and a standard deck of playing cards. So you can go to any gaming closet or junk drawer anywhere and get exactly what you need to play this game. And then we wanted to have the core book at a price point that was accessible. So, the core book is $20. So anyone can spend $20, buy
Oh yeah,
one,
totally.
and have what they want.
Absolutely. What made you decide to go for a whole system as opposed to just putting out, say, something like? Well, so what brought me to you guys is right into the world, Wyrd and Wild, which is,
Hmm.
I would say, more of a kind of true supplement. It doesn't
Yeah.
have necessarily a core RPG. Um, you probably could have done something like Never Going Home, glommed onto an existing system, whichever
Yep.
system you would choose to do that. Were there particular reasons that you things you wanted to address that you didn't think other systems could address, or just other reasons why you decided to do a full fledged system around it as opposed to going for more of a true supplement?
So, just I know there's all kinds of game designers out there in the industry who um, it's not necessarily a pride thing, but there's a challenge to it, right? They say, well, uh, I know that there's something out there that might do something similar. Could we have done this with Fate? Could we have done this with the Blades in the Dark system? Or sure, we could have done anything. We could have done an OSR game, um, but we wanted to take it and kind of make it ours. And we wanted to again make, like we said, we wanted a system to be accessible. So even looking at the differences between Never Going Home and Tenebria, in our +1 system, the core dice mechanics are always going to be the same. It doesn't matter what +1 game you play, um, but how you handle cards is going to be kind of a modular element. So, in Never Going Home, the cards represent your humanity, things that you give up in exchange for power. Whereas in Tenebria, the cards represent resources that you're bringing back to your establishment, or your settlement, to try to reestablish it and to build
Mm,
other structures. Heckin' Good Doggos, that's going to be on Kickstarter at the tail end of January. That one, the cards are used to just help you overcome challenges and give you bonuses to your dice, because that's more of a family friendly game, because everyone's playing dogs doing dog stuff. And so we wanted to be able to say, like, I'm going to sit down with my 9-year-old and my 6-year-old. Um, my 4-year-old will most definitely play, but she's probably not going to be doing everything with the cards. But my 9-year-old, my 6-year-old are totally going to understand how to play this game. But I can also take that game and play it with my regular gaming group of a bunch of, you
absolutely.
know,
What do you like
3
about
to
the
40
playing
year olds.
cards as a mechanic?
What was that?
I've noticed. I said playing cards as a mechanic. What do you like most about using them? Obviously, there's a lot of different things you can do with them than with dice.
Yeah.
Is there anything particular that draws you to them? I felt for Never Going Home, it was kind of thematic because I always think of soldiers playing cards in the trenches, so you're kind of
Yep.
pulling that out. But again, there are interesting kind of mechanical elements. Was there something in particular that drew you to integrating cards, or was it
So
what was the process behind that?
yeah. So for Never Going Home, it was twofold. Number one, you already hit on it. Soldiers had dice and they had cards in trenches. So we wanted it to kind of feel that way. Um, However, we also wanted the game to be accessible, and everyone has cards and dice. You don't need to go get a full set of polyhedrals. You don't need to go buy our special dice set that comes in this one particular pack. You don't need that. You can just go raid a Yahtzee set and play our game. Um, and that's kind of what we wanted. What I personally like from a design element is obviously the randomness of a deck of cards, but it's all obviously subdivided into your suits, and it's subdivided further into face cards and number cards. So you have different tiers in which you can divide things up if you want to have special bonuses, or you want to have certain things highlighted. We have a game in development right now called it's about psychic children. All right, and one of the elements that
Do
that
these children live in the corn?
they don't live in the corner. I mean, I guess they
Okay,
could,
just checking.
but in this, but in the setting, and it was based on a 200 word RPG that was done by our designer, and we loved it so much that we actually reached out to the designer Mike, and we're like, can we take this mechanic from a 200 word role playing game and use it in a +1 game. And he's like, that sounds great. And we're like, good. Do you want to write that? And he's like, I sure do. So, and the product is fantastic. But in that game, the cards are used as a way to demonstrate how your psychic powers come to fruition. So someone says, I want to lift that car with my brain. And you go, okay, what's this card? And they have to guess what the top card of the deck is. And you flip it over, and depending on how close you are in number, or is it the same color or the same suit or whatever, it details how much of that power is used.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
And I've done it in a convention game where someone says, well, that's the Queen of Spades, and you flip it over and it's the Queen of Spades, and the entire table just erupts.
Absolutely.
Because you're
it's
like,
your
yeah,
called shot moment right there.
yeah, exactly. It's so much fun just to use some of those different randomness generators.
But did you have the Ghostbusters shock treatment if they guessed wrong?
Right.
Give it a little zap.
I love that.
No, the cards are really neat. I think something that didn't occur to me either until I was reading Never Going Home, or it might have been something else that using it, but that you have not only do you have the numbers, you also have, you have the numbers, you have the suits and the colors. So you have really these of various, half, 50% chance of, I assume it's 50%, red or black, and then 25% chance of the suit, and then one in whatever, 15 or 16, whatever it is. Which really gives you a lot of things you can get just from one card pull, as opposed to, well, how many dice do I have to roll to get kind of, all that stuff. And you're right. I think something that is, I don't want to say underrated, but maybe a little bit. I think, I'm usually in the OSR space is probably and everyone loves all the different dice, but there's something to be said for just simple dice. As you said, you could raid Yahtzee if you're a camping trip or in a cabin, you can go to the Stop and Go, and they'll have some dice and they'll have some playing cards, and you could do that. If you need to go there and get some D30s and D8s and stuff, you're probably out of luck. But that stuff is very available.
So we've noticed in some of the indie games, you're starting to see cards being used more and more. One of our favorite designs is by a company called Nerdburger Games. Craig Campbell actually designed a game called Capers. All right, so it's like the Prohibition era with like gangsters and flappers and everything, except everyone has superpowers. All right, and so one of the decision-making mechanics uses a deck of cards, but it's generally you're coming up with blackjack hands. And so we played that, and we're like, this is, I think Matt and I were both like either play testers. I think Matt was a play tester for the original one, and I wrote something for one of the source books. But it's just such a cool cool element. You don't roll dice in Capers, you play cards. And it was a lot of fun. And so, Craig has done some really, really cool stuff with that in a number of Capers books. But we've seen it in some of our other games. And Matt was a judge for the 200 word RPG contest, and you'll see cards being used in new and interesting ways from a lot of really cool designers, just putting together a compelling game in 200 words or less. So it really makes you kind of think outside of the box. You see some really neat stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it's something that's going to be one of, I guess, the calling cards, to make a bad turn of phrase, for your +1 system, is having that kind of card element. But it's interesting how you're going to change it depending on which which game you're playing. I wanted to ask you, let me go back to the page
And one more thing about that.
Go for it.
Going back to our kind of art forward design, the cool thing about that is it allows us to, give an opportunity for our artists to do something, either one, that they may not have done before, which is design a deck of playing cards, or two, highlight or focus on some art that they've done or want to do. So our Never Going Home deck that, we printed some and have them at conventions and everything. We have it, I think, on Drive Through RPG as well. But we have some art that Charles Ferguson Avery did that's only in the card deck.
Nice.
Stephen Wu did an entire deck of cards for Tenebria that's only in the Tenebria deck. Mike Muma is going to do a card deck for Heckin' Good Doggos, and all of those are going to be dogs of our backers. So like yeah, so it's just going to be, hey, you want to put your dog on a card? Put it on here. Put his name on here, her name on here, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
So
hopefully,
yeah,
as COVID recedes, I mean, it's hard to think about that now with Omicron surging, but I
right,
think these elements that have table presence, I think, are really going to be fun. And
yeah,
cards definitely have and as you're saying, with the kind of being able to come up with custom decks of cards, really gives them that great kind of adding that. Because I'm a big board game fan too, and I think the one thing that board games have, you think
oh
about
yeah,
like that kind of table presence, and cards, these different elements that are physical, they just have something to them. I mean, rolling dice is great too, but cards have a certain quality to them. Be able to, like you were saying, when you run at the convention, somebody guesses the card, and you flip it over and slam it down, and there's the card.
right.
It's a great kind of great moment. I wanted to ask you about, before I forget again, Blood in the Banquet Hall. I don't remember seeing this at PAX. Maybe I just missed it at your table, but
You
it seems
did
pretty
miss
interesting
it
and
at our
different.
table.
I
No,
must have
it
missed it then.
so we were sharing a booth with Game and a Curry, uh, uh, who is our co-producer on that game. So we had the one that was facing one aisle because we were at that corner booth, and they were on the other aisle, or the corner, uh, where our tables met. We actually had a bunch of them up there. So you were talking about your love of board games. I'm so glad. I mean, my office space behind me is an absolute disaster right now, but over here I have about 600 board games in my wall shelves over here. So I'm
Oh, nice.
also a huge board game fan. So again, high five on that. But
Absolutely.
Jiangxi Blood in the Banquet Hall. Whoop.
Oh,
Let me
was
see.
it a board game first, or was that just a
Barb
box set at
actually
the end?
signed mine. But
Oh,
this it is a tabletop RPG, but
okay.
it has board game elements, and I think
Mm.
you're going to see more of that in kind of as we move forward in the industry, not just from us but from other game companies. You're going to start seeing some of these hybridized games, either things that are more on the role playing game side that have some board game elements, or more of the board game side that has some RPG elements, such as like Gloomhaven or Kingdom Death Monster. Even going back to the old, the old days, Hero Quest.
Right.
That was obviously a board game, but it introduced a lot of people to that dude behind a screen and guys on a map. You know,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel like in some alternate universe, fourth edition D&D was kind of Gloomhaven. When I first saw Gloomhaven,
yeah.
like this pretty much seems like fourth edition. Only
This
they
is
just kind of went out and said it was a board game instead of kind of having it be basically a board game, but not actually calling it a board game.
right.
You know.
And And so Blood in the Banquet Hall is an RPG that has a board which represents your restaurant, it has decks of cards that represent dreams, it has dice. I mean, so it has a lot of these tactile elements that make you feel like you have a board game kind of going on, and it's an RPG with a really cool table presence.
It feels like it has
Um,
a bit of a, dare I say, zombie side kind of feel.
Not I would say
I'm
maybe
just
from
reading from the description, so
I would
correct
say
me because I.
from a storytelling perspective, maybe, but
Mhm.
not at all from a gameplay
Okay.
perspective. There's no miniatures, there's no map,
Oh,
there's
okay. So
nothing
the
like
board is just a representation. You're not actually putting your characters on the board or the
correct.
enemies. Okay.
So we let me actually open up my own copy of this. Um, so when we actually had this made on Kickstarter, we had some unlocks. So it has like art prints in it. It's got our like laminated character sheets as
Oh,
well.
nice.
And going back from a kind of a board game element, you can see your character sheet. You have all of these different elements here, and each one of these things are can be filled up by some cards or some nightmares that mess up your character as your character is haunted. But when I say it has a board, like it has a folding card stock board like a board game. But again, it just represents uh, your restaurant. Okay, but again, it is an RPG at heart. Um, Whole bunch of polyhedral dice, etc. But Yeah, just
where did the theme for that game come from?
so back in 2019, we were approached by um, Senfung Lim and Banana Chan. We were selling Never Going Home like hotcakes, and we had said we want to work with some different designers. If you want to, pitch us an idea for an RPG, let us know. And Banana and Sen had been tossing around this design for a while. I think since a little bit in the year before, and they said we have this idea that's going to focus on um, the Chinese immigrant experience and um, dealing with the racism of the 1920s, the stress of holding up familial responsibilities, maintaining your family restaurant, all while being haunted by the Zhongshe, the vampires from our homeland. And I'm the son of an immigrant myself, and I said, "This is absolutely awesome. We love this idea. We'd love to talk with you about this more." We came to an agreement and decided to co-develop this game. Um, and I mean, even if I was not involved in this RPG, this is one of the prettiest RPGs
Yeah,
I've ever seen.
the art looks amazing, and the theme is it's really nice and different.
Yeah,
My wife is Chinese American. Her father owned a restaurant for a long time.
yeah,
So it kind of spoke to me on that level. And then also watching that what was that documentary? Searching for General Tso. So have
yeah,
you seen that one?
yeah.
They talked a lot about that. These original kind of restaurants going up in different places. Like they talked to one that I forget, we're somewhere in the Midwest, and at one point they had bomb threats and stuff before, of course, people taste the food, and all of a sudden they're like, oh well, this is good. Maybe we should just eat here instead of trying to destroy the place just because. You know,
Absolutely.
funny how those things work out.
It's it you know and I think a lot of people uh who have their own immigrant stories um can really relate to some of this stuff. I mean, you can really relate to, like the fact that my mother was, called a red and a commie, and was laughed out of school because she wore jeans on her first day, and she didn't know any better. Being in Central Illinois and being an immigrant from Russia, like that was a thing. And but everyone has one of those, there's one or more of those stories in their family somehow. Um, and we wanted to kind of highlight that those stories can be told and shared in a way that can be, I guess, cathartic, and can also be educational. I think Banana and Sen did a fantastic job on the design. I think all of the artists involved, from Stephen Wu, who did some of the interior art, as well as Kwanchai Moria, who did the cover. And Kwanchai's done covers of games all over the place in this industry, and just the cover that he did for this was just gorgeous. When he sent this in and turned it in, I, I just stood in my kitchen and laughed because it was so good. Um, and so there's all kinds of that, of those elements that made this design something that we're really really proud of.
Do you feel like that's kind of? I feel like just talking over these games with you, that's sort of a theme for you guys, kind of as a creative, I guess, group, are covering all these different kinds of themes and sort of time traveling and culture traveling around the world and playing off that. I mean, is that something you look for, or it just so happens that you have kind of this wide breadth of sort of cultures and things in your game so far?
um so I think at first it was accidental. With Wild Skies and Never Going Home, we said we want there to be a World War I horror game. We want there to be a game where we can play, sky pirates. That's awesome. But as we've moved forward, we're definitely taking a deliberate attempt in keeping some of these lines going. We have some conversations with um, some of the people that we've worked with before. Tristan Zimmerman was the lead designer for Tears in the Sea, the Never Going Home source book on naval combat. He's a naval veteran, and he is the owner of Molten Sulfur, who's twice Emmy nominated blog on how to use historical elements
Mm.
in real historical figures in RPGs. And so we want to work with Tristan some more. And, if he's still up for it, we want to say, hey, Tristan, do you want to write a bunch of games with the +1 system that are historically based? And they can be alternate history or blah, blah, blah. And he's doing some fantastic stuff. He just did a game on Kickstarter called Shanty Hunters, which was all about like going and hunting down sea shanties and the magic that's contained within. And so in the game, you're sitting there learning and singing sea shanties, and you see that at a convention. It's amazing. So not only is he a fantastic writer, and he's got some really cool things going, um, he is just, from a design standpoint, does some really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me about the new game that's coming up on the Kickstarter.
Hecking Good Doggos.
Absolutely.
So that came about from just a side comment from my wife at Gen Con one year. She was like, "Oh, you guys have all these games that you're working on. You guys should just do a game about dogs doing dog stuff." And because we love dogs, and she was like, "Yeah." And so that actually has been kind of our subtitle in the entire development of Hecking Good Doggos. And sticking with the kind of like the meme of dogs talking all goofy, we wanted to kind of explore that. And so I think we had posted something a little while ago, just the cover of the game, and it's just a sea of dogs coming at you. So ultimately, it's a family-friendly RPG that uses standard 6-sided dice and a standard deck of playing cards. And your dogs are overcoming challenges, like someone has come to the house, whether it's it's the mailman. We got to defend our property. We have to defend our people. And you have your kind of relationship uh, with your person in the game that you kind of maintain. We have micro settings in the game as well for like, if you ever, can your dog play the game? I'm sure your dog can. If your dog is a good boy, you could totally play the game. So anyway, we have, if you've ever read the graphic novel Beasts of Burden, which is a fantastic graphic novel series about dogs in the town of Burden Hill, that they interact with some supernatural elements that are going on. Like there's a ghost of someone who fell in a well. There's someone who they find a witch's coven at some point, and they're interacting with the cat of the witch's coven. So we have a micro setting in there called Hexed Good Doggos. We have one which is kind of like set in a post-apocalyptic setting, kind of like dog meat from Fallout. So it's Wrecking Good Doggos. We have one which is like the dogs of your D&D adventuring party. So that's Ye Old Favorable Hounds. Just all these, like, we had a lot of fun with that. But ultimately, it's an opportunity to have a fun, a fun just encounter or experience of being able to play any dog that you want, roaming around the neighborhood, chatting
Now,
with the
are they
neighborhood.
anthropomorphized dogs? Or are we playing
Nope,
dogs on all
they're
fours?
just
All right.
straight up dogs. But if you want to play one where all of your dogs get in giant mechs and go fight the octopus, you can do that, and that's called Mechin' Good Doggos. So we give a bunch of have a bunch of fun opportunities there. We have fun opportunities there for players to just go do dog stuff. Dogs doing dog stuff is the whole point of the game.
That's awesome. And it's using the same +1 system. I know you said this is supposed to be more family friendly. So beyond the more simplified use of cards in this one, are there any other ways that you're simplifying the system, or do you feel like the system is fairly simple enough already that you don't feel like you need to simplify it further?
So there are, like I said, the cards themselves are the cards themselves are kind of streamlined there. Um, so each one of the suits in the game kind of represents a different way to handle conflict. One of the things I've liked about some of the family friendly games that are coming out now, it's like the polymorph system that's used from um, oh gosh, ninth level games. They did a game called the Excellence, and I played that with my kids, and they love it. They all get to roll one particular die, and uh, they can all try to handle or resolve conflicts in different ways. So my son is like, "Oh, cool! I have this really cool sword. I'm going to do this, attack it this way," and my daughter is like, "I'm just going to talk to the bad guys and tell them to quit doing what they're doing." And they all have different ways to approach that. So in Heck and Good Doggos, um, the spades represent if you want to handle and resolve a conflict using some friendship, or hearts represent like your cutes, your how adorable you are. Maybe you can get someone to leave you alone that way. um, we have paws, which is anything generally athletics, which represent our hearts, or I'm sorry, clubs. And then diamonds are like your teeth and claws, and something that's going to require some kind of aggression. And any of those things, um, you can spend cards that way to add bonuses to your die roll. In the game, the +1 system, any of those die rolls are um, depending on what your attributes are, your brawn, your smarts, or your guts. You can manipulate a die roll either before or after the fact. Um, and it's simple enough. Like, okay, you have 3 points in guts. You can add 3 dice to your roll ahead of time. So, you know, having a one-to-one relation, either before or after the roll, is really helpful for kids. You can say you can spend 2 now and you can save 1 later after the roll if you really want to. And so it also helps them understand a dice pool manipulation and a risk reward system. It's not overly complicated, so it's going to be one of those things um, that we think kids are really gonna love.
I am all about that risk reward stuff. When is it coming out, or when are you launching the Kickstarter?
So the manuscript is pretty much already written. There's a few modifications that we're going to be doing the rest of this week and towards the end of, or towards the beginning of January. And so um, the um, that's going to be launching in Kickstarter towards the end of January, and our goal is to pretty much use Kickstarter to know what our print run is going to be. We're definitely going to have enough to get into distribution as well. So we're pretty much ready to say print on at the end of the Kickstarter, so sometime in January. Now,
Oh, awesome.
Matthias is actually on here on the chat. He's the one who's doing the layout for that. Uh, so, hey, surprise! No, but that's one of it. That's going to be our end goal, is to pretty much just hit print. Now, obviously, with COVID and everything, it's screwed up a lot of stuff. Zhongshe is the only game that we've ever produced offshore. Everything else is we produce here domestically. So international shipping has generally been something we haven't had to deal with before Zhongshe. And of course, we print this in China when all international freight shut down. However, we still have when we printed into the Wyrd and Wild, it took our usual 2-week print time, because we use a domestic printer. It's really awesome. We love them. And it took that 2-week print time and moved it to about 3 or 4 months, because they just couldn't deal with the influx of additional work that was being brought on. They had some staffing issues, both in the print shop and the warehouse. So we at least are building that time frame up front into our Kickstarter. So it'll probably close in February, and we should have it delivered to backers and available by Origins this year in June.
Oh, nice. I do want to go back to Into the Weird and Wild because that was my first introduction to your guys' games.
Yeah.
What did you? What was the impetus for that? I mean, it's one that go around OSR forums looking at things, hex crawls. I do a lot of stuff on hex crawling. It's one of the sources that was continually, oh, you got to check out Into the Weird and Wild. I love Into the Weird and Wild, all the stuff they do. And having read it, it is an amazing kind of resource. Where did you see a need? Did this come out of something you were dealing with in your own games? How did that come about?
I would love to tell you that Into the Weird and Wild was my idea because it's such an amazing book, an amazing product. Again, Charles Ferguson Avery, who did all of the art and everything for Never Going Home, he launched on Kickstarter a few years ago Into the Weird and Wild, and it was successful. He printed enough to fulfill his Kickstarter. That was about it. He had some limited copies on hand, and we were like, Charlie, can we print this and get it into distribution for you? And at first he was like, no, I mean, I think I'm good here. I'm like, that's fine. We'll let it lie. But as someone who backed his Kickstarter, excuse me again, geez, my business partner backed the Kickstarter, absolutely love the product. He's got fantastic ideas there. It's all about, the woods don't want you there. They're older than civilization themselves, so you can use this in any setting, really. But we're going to, we used ours most recently in a D&D 5e game where, like I said, like the woods in between these city adventures, you don't necessarily have the Indiana Jones travel music and you're there.
Right.
It's it's a dungeon in and of itself. You have new plants, new diseases, phases of the moon, new monsters that are part of like this deep horror, this deep wooded horror. Ways to make your own hex maps that will show you that dungeon, describing like how many days you are out in the woods. But my favorite thing, because I played a gnome druid hermit who was from the Circle of the Spores. She was just crotchety old lady. She made it to level 13, never once had a gold piece or anything like that, any money, because anything that we fought or killed, there are rules in there for how do you skin and prepare that hide. So are you going to take a little bit of time or a long period of time? And depending on how much effort you put in there, you get more stuff. And so she would, oh, we need to, to go into this village and we need some provisions. I don't have any money, but I have this like pristine direwolf pelt. And like, oh, you can have the best room at the inn and whatever it was. So it was a lot of fun. And that's actually like my favorite element in that book. It can be used it's system agnostic, can be used in any setting. We've used it in Pathfinder, we've used it in 5e, we've used it in Never Going Home at Gen Con this past year. It's like I said, it's system agnostic. You can use it in OSR games. It's
absolutely,
it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal product. And so I loved it so much that I kept hounding Charlie. I was like, let us reprint this. People will buy this. And it became our most successful Kickstarter, even more successful than Zhangshou Blood in the Banquet Hall, which blew the doors off of all of our expectations. And we have 2 more books in that line that are coming out. So the next one, which is going to be coming to Kickstarter in June or July, is called Into the Cess and Citadel, which is going to be describing the seedy underworld of some of these old fantasy cities, as well as the other hierarchies, the other tiers in some of these cities. And then a third book, which the theme has not firmly been established yet, but we believe we're leaning towards like the old haunted coasts. So,
oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
It is really an awesome resource, and I late backed it, the revised one, after I got people were telling me about the original one. I think actually I hasn't come yet, and that was the one thing I was bummed about at PAX, but I didn't get to meet Charles the artist, but I know he had signed something, so I was able to walk away with a
Oh yeah,
signed print because I wasn't able to have him sign my copy since I didn't have it yet.
man. So let me tell you about that whole adventure. So the first Kickstarter that Charlie had done, he partnered with someone who was going to be writing an adventure called The Grim Harvest, and he was going to give that to all of his backers. And it was during our Kickstarter when we said, "Okay, we'll reprint this book," that one of the backers from the first campaign actually reached out to us and was like, "Hey, whatever happened to The Grim Harvest?" And I said, "I don't know." So we had a brief conversation with Charlie at one point, and there was some familial issues that prevented that original thing getting written. So we took it upon ourselves both as what we thought was an obligation to those previous backers, and as just an act of good faith. We said we will not only print we will hire someone to write and print the Grim Harvest, but we'll give you some additional fiction and additional adventures as a either separate PDF or as a separate physical product, depending on what tier you're in and stuff like that. And so that one we got a late start on. Because it wasn't initially in our scope of work. We didn't
Okay.
we didn't understand what that was going to be. And so our when we had talked with our printer initially, they said we can get that in queue right around the same time as your original book, Into the Weird and Wild. But through, because of everything going on in COVID,
Yeah.
we didn't get that until I think it shipped a week early. They said it was going to ship to everyone to Quartermaster Logistics on the 21st, and it shipped I think on the 14th. So they at least were able to move that up a little bit, but that is in fulfillment actively right now. I talked to our Quartermaster Logistics resource today. So
I mean, I am super excited for it. It didn't even, it was something that didn't even really occur to me until I saw, met up with you guys at PAX. I'm like, the book, and I was like, oh yeah, and I don't have it yet. And then, but COVID's thrown
wait a second.
everything so topsy turvy that I was like, yeah, I mean, everything is just all kinds of screwy.
When we were at Gen Con, we had copies of Zhangshi, but only because we air freighted about 50 copies to America before they even put them in a container to go wait in the ocean with everyone else's stuff. And we had some backers who came up and were like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get this. And we're like, you can feel free, check it out. We had a demo copy. They could open it up. They could see all the stuff. And we didn't have this is just how awesome the community has been to us, and I'm assuming to everyone, to every other company. They've been so receptive to the fact that COVID really screwed up everything, and so they said, no, this is great. I just wanted to see it. I'm so glad that this is coming to my house. Don't worry about it. We're not mad. It's like everyone's in the same boat, and in some cases literally in the same boat, you know. So they were like, no, we have no problem with this. And so we love the support that that our fans and customers have given us through this entire process.
Yeah, I mean, look, nobody could have. I mean, it continues to be something that nobody could predict, and how everything was going to shake out. Like, I was a backer for Cora Quest.
Oh yeah,
and I think originally I was like, I was like, oh, I kickstarted this, and my daughter's birthday is kind of in the spring. I'm like, well, there's no ways I'm getting here in the spring, but I'll get here by Christmas, so I'll just tuck another Christmas list. And it's like, and the thing is, it could have, it's been sitting, but then there was customs. Like, that was like the thing is, like, after all the shipping stuff, it was still in position to come, and then I was starting to get those updates in customs. Still in customs. In customs.
Our shipment for Zhangshi actually got it that was going to Quartermaster. It went up to Port of New York, or I think it was Elizabeth Seaport, and they put it on a train, and it was on its way down because Quartermaster's in Orlando, and they said it stopped in Savannah, Georgia, because they forgot to do a customs check.
Oh,
and
no.
so we're like, wait, how long is this going to take? Luckily for us, for Zhongsha, it only took 2 days. But, the answer is always, well, it's the United States Customs Service. It's going to take as long as we want.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
okay. Uh,
Not to change this into the core quest, Bob, but I did get the email saying that it's out of customs. So
see,
anybody who's in here who's a backer, update your address if it needs to be updating in Quartermaster because it's finally going to be going out soon.
I was so upset that I missed that Kickstarter. Because it's just, that again, family-friendly RPGs and stuff, like family-friendly games.
Yeah,
Like,
my
it's cool.
daughter's 7, and I want to get her into RPGs, and I thought this will be a great way to kind of lean into it again,
Yeah.
kind of have that table presence and then be able to make stuff and kind of get her into that sort of mind. I think it would be perfect. I mean, it'll still be perfect when it gets here, but
Yeah.
things happen. At least it will be coming eventually, and I guess not that far along now. I'm cognizant of the time. I don't want to keep you too long. Anything that we didn't talk about that you want to throw out there? Anything going on? Any projects? Anything at all? And I'm
No,
happy
I
to
mean,
talk a little
we're
board
gonna.
games at the end of this whole thing too.
I mean, we can definitely. I can talk all day. No, we have. We just have all kinds of really cool stuff coming out. I think this year we're going to be really focusing on getting Heckin' Good Doggos out, our Psychic Children game out, and as well as the the next book for the Into the Wyrd and Wild series, the Into the Sesson Citadel. That one, again, that manuscript and the art is like 99% done now, and Charles Ferguson Avery's doing the layout. That's going to be another one of those projects that we're going to be just hitting print on as soon as the funding period is over. That one I don't believe is going to be on Kickstarter. I think we're going to try to use GameFound on that one. And so we're going to be trying a bunch of new things. We also are going to be partnering with uh, uh, Doug Lewandowski and his design partner Julian to bring another kind of like hybrid RPG element gaming experience around haunted houses to everyone later this year. So we have a lot of really cool things in the pipe. And it's what they always say: ideas are easy, but execution is hard, right? So
yeah, tell me about it. So tell me about this. Let me poke your brain here. So what's the deal with GameFound versus Kickstarter? I noticed it seems to be a trend of some folks moving over away from Kickstarter to GameFound. Is it the blockchain thing? Is it just other things? Does GameFound just have a friendlier setup, or just more meets your needs?
So
if you don't mind sharing what the
no, I don't mind sharing at
is.
all. I don't mind sharing at all. So there are a few things specifically for that project because we're working with Feral Indie Studios and on that one specifically. The Kickstarter blockchain issue is the core motivating factor there, but we had always wanted to kind of explore GameFound anyway. Ryan Schoon is does some work for GameFound. He's a friend of ours, and we've just wanted to kind of see what that can offer the RPG space. I know they do games, unlike Kickstarter, which does everything. Plus, with GameFound, you as a creator, their fees are lower. So with Kickstarter, you generally are looking at 10 or 11% of whatever you make on Kickstarter, and it just disappears into Kickstarter as just having access to the platform. GameFound is a little more friendly for creators, which is great, and being able to use the tools that it offers, not only as a funding platform, but also as not necessarily a replacement for BackerKit, but that's also your pledge manager on GameFound as well. So it's more of a one-stop shop.
Kind of simplifies the workflow a bit.
Yeah, we've explored that, and we just said, well, we want to at least try it out and see if it works for us, and if GameFound is successful, maybe you'll see more of our stuff there.
I mean, it makes sense. I've just noticed, I want to say a bunch of people, but it's come up a few times where people have said, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this on GameFound this time instead of Kickstarter. I think even some of it definitely predated the whole blockchain thing. So I was just
Yeah,
curious kind of what folks were thinking in those regards. But yeah, I mean,
that
having
was
a
probably a
game
push.
centric, yeah, having
People
a
were like,
game
"All
centric
right, that's the
platform
last straw."
is good, you know. Do you feel like you don't, or I guess you must not feel that you're going to lose too many eyeballs? I imagine the advantage of Kickstarter being that it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of everywhere at this point. I mean, you know, so it has that big kind of market presence regardless of whether you're in games or not. So someone might be coming in looking at some other kind of tech device and end up on your page, which you won't get
Right.
necessarily from GameFound.
So here's one of the things that we have an opportunity to do is, uh, you know, we do some digital marketing whenever we do a project, both through Facebook advertising, as well as being able to reach out to our customers via our drive-through RPG email that we blast out. But we also still have access to our backers and our mailing list. Even while keeping people apprised of what's going on with our other projects. So we can still post an update on Kickstarter and say, by the way, the next one's going to be on GameFound. I mean, Kickstarter hasn't shut that down and told us we can't do that. Hasn't told creators that we can't do that. But we want to make sure that our backers know where to find us, and they can find us on all of our social media channels and our feeds as well. But are we going to see a decrease? Maybe, because people say, well, I don't want to use a new platform. I'm just going to use Kickstarter. It's what I use. But I think GameFound is definitely getting a larger foothold in that space, and deservedly so. They've had some really excellent projects. I think they have the Rome Total War project, which is coming up. They did the Portal Games Robinson Crusoe Kickstarter.
I backed that one.
Yeah, which was, I mean, that was wildly successful. Um,
Totally.
and
So
so,
are you guys going to fall for the Kickstarter slash, I assume, a GameFound trap? You're not going to add like 800 biddies to your game and then up the price by about $500? The
no,
big giant box of Into the Weird and Wild minis,
okay, so that's the thing. We wanted to
one
make
foot
sure
tall trees with
in
real
in the
foliage and
future with their we've definitely talked with some friends that we have over at 1985 games about potentially doing some kind of collaboration on some of our projects in the future. That's not in the cards at the moment. Like, I can, again, it's a whole ideas are easy thing. We can say we'd love to work with whoever to make some really cool stuff, but at that point, is it gonna delay a product that people want that's already ready to go? We don't want to do that. Um, so for Into the Weird and Wild, Into the Cess and Citadel, all of that stuff, that's like our goal for Into the Cess and Citadel is not to have any physical stretch goals that are going to delay delivery. You
nice.
know,
I mean,
we can have,
I was half joking, but you know that as someone, as you
it's
know,
the
you
world
follow
we live
board
in, man.
games. You know, there's this whole trend of just adding minis to everything. You know, I really
Right.
like the Dune game, Dune Imperium,
Imperium.
and I bought the minis pack, but the
Yeah.
box came a couple weeks ago, and I didn't realize how massive the box was. And I've seen some of the
Yeah.
games, like I go to the Dice Tower and I'm looking at their unboxing, and these boxes are just getting just giant. And, you know, no, beyond
Insane.
the fact that it ends up, you know, you have a game that's probably a $50-$60 game that ends up being a $360 game because instead of using chits or something else, everything's minis. It also means that
Right.
here I am in a small Brooklyn apartment, means that I better be able to use that box as my new dining table, maybe put the
Right.
TV on top of it because, you know,
Well, like,
it's
I
huge.
do you ever so I backed Dice Throne. I love, again, it's Battle Yahtzee. Yay. Uh and so, I really enjoy Dice Throne. And they did the Dice Throne Adventures that came out and had minis and everything, and that's cool. But I'm like, I have no real need for these minis. They're really awesome. And as someone who loves minis and wants to pay, I mean, I have all these epic encounter stuff over here, which are huge boxes, and there's like a dozen minis in each one of those boxes, or maybe in some of them there's one big mini, and I'm like, cool. But they're fantastic things, and I really enjoy them. Um, so yeah, some of this stuff, it gets a little out of control. we would love to have some Never Going Home minis for some of the creatures and some of the soldiers and stuff like that we have in there. That'd be really neat, but that's not in the cards right now. Maybe for 2023, but again, that would be very specific and targeted. It wouldn't necessarily be we're going to make, you know, 300 sculpts of blah blah blah. I don't know.
Yeah, minis are great, and if I had the space and the time, and if I felt like I would paint them, I see amazing stuff. Like Alter Quest is a game I have, and I see people painting those minis. I'm like, that's great, but I just know for myself, I'm never going to get around to painting them. If I
Yeah.
ever became wealthy, maybe I'll send them off to somebody who could paint them for me. But I'm perfectly happy with standees or other things, especially if it means I'm not spending oodles of money for the component that, while it looks nice, you kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
A little ways into the game, you're no longer looking at all that detail in that sculpt. You're just moving it
Right.
around like it's the boot in Monopoly.
It's the boot Monopoly, right? Well, one of the things I really like, they had the Hellboy RPG that came out, and they had I believe they partnered or they leveraged some of the previous sculpts from the Hellboy board game um, in order to add some additional stuff. For hey, do people want to have BPRD agents, or you want to have these other figures or adversaries? And I thought that was cool because people are gonna have dudes on a map and play that. So from an RPG and board game kind of crossover, it was really neat. And I know I've follow Matthias Benici, who's actually on our chat right now. He's been doing a lot of those paintings. He'll do a Facebook Live video of doing some painting, and we get to see some of that really cool stuff that I wouldn't be doing unless I get a good vacation and my kids get a little older, so they give me time to paint. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's some really cool stuff, but I need more hours. I need more hours in the day.
Totally. So what are you playing? What are your top couple of board games that are on your shelf right now?
Oh gosh, top couple of board games. I just picked up. What do we? I just picked up Juicy Fruits at Origins. I picked up Merchants of the Dark Road at PAX, and so these are things I'm really trying to get to my table. The ones that I just got on Kickstarter was the new expansion for Valyria Card Kingdoms. Valyria Card Kingdoms is just
I haven't played that, but I've wanted to. It's kind of been sitting on my kind of want list on Board Game Geek for I feel like
Did you ever play Machi Koro?
I've only seen it played. I haven't played it, but I know conceptually how it plays.
It's a better version of Machi Koro. So like you build your tableau with your cards, and whatever you roll dice, you're able to activate different sections of your tableau. So okay, my peasants and my knights, they activate and give me either resources or fight or magic. And if I get fight, then I can go defeat the monsters, and you get the most victory points, you win the game. But anyway, it's a really good game. Similar mechanic is used in a game that AEG put out called Space Base, which Space Base is one of my favorite games that have come out over the past couple of years. Again, it's tableau building, and I've talked to John D. Clare about, hey, can we potentially leverage this for, again, a hybridized role-playing game experience? And so that's something that will be that you may see from Wet Ink games in the future. But no, Space Base, really cool. Love that one. What was the other one?
Have you played Machi Koro 2? Because I know they came out with that sequel.
I had not played it because they didn't have it at Gen Con. And that was slightly disappointing. My other one that I've been playing a lot of, we do a lot of the Exit games. So we've been playing a lot of those with my family. And Marvel Champions is one that I'm really into, but I'm terrible at. Super bad.
Which one? Marvel Champions? That's the one that's all card based, right? Because I have that was that. I forget. It was at Target. It was like a Target exclusive for a little while, or Walmart exclusive.
No, that's Marvel United. Marvel Champions is the one that Fantasy Flight put out, and it kind of follows. Right. It's very similar to the Lord of the Rings card game, that Fantasy Flight put out.
Yeah, I
But
like that one a lot. I haven't pulled it out in a while, but I do.
yeah, Lord
I
of the
do
Rings.
enjoy it.
Like I got it. I got the core box on a discount shelf at my local game shop, and my wife is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so we played it. And I was like, "This is fantastic."
Yeah, it's
Um,
really good.
and for some reason, I'm better at that than I am at
And the
Champions.
champions.
Like seriously, I'm awful at Champions, and I love it. Like it's like cool. I, I rely on the tactics of my fellow players
Hey,
to get me
that's
through that
that's
game.
that's that's what it's all about. I think I rode so many coattails that one time we played Gloomhaven.
Oh yeah,
Just because I was like, I was it was my the first and only time I played it, and there was just so much going on.
yeah.
I was like, hey, you just kind of tell me where to go, and I'll just try not to. And it has that kind of a similar kind of card based mechanic where you
Hmm.
have your cards, but as you're spending them, you're losing them. So when do you play that card? Uh, Really cool. I didn't buy any of them. I don't have Jaws of Line or anything. I don't know if I'm going to get into Frosthaven. I don't know. I feel like it's just too big for me to play
Oh,
by myself. My wife's not going to play it. My daughter's a few years away from playing it, so I just maybe
well,
by the time if she does want to play it when she's has another 4 or 5 years on her, they'll be
oh
down to
yeah.
Gloomhaven 6 or something, or all the existing Gloomhavens will be down to like $50 or something, and I
So like
can go pick it
I
up
got
on the
Jaws of
cheap.
the Lion, and I have the original Gloomhaven, and I backed Frosthaven. I don't have that one yet, but like that's my that's my goal. Is like I want to have the time to to sit
Did you get the
and play
figurine
through
at
that.
PAX?
Ooh,
The
no,
Frosthaven Gloomhaven figurine?
I didn't. I
Oh,
I
missed
should
out. Yeah,
have.
that was the one thing. I went into it was one of those funny things when I was at PAX. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And so I was ended up being down by the hall where they're going to run it. And this lady was like, are you here for the Frosthaven things? Or you should just kind of get seated because it's going to get full. And I said, I guess I am. And so I
I
sat
guess I
down.
am.
Sat
Well,
down and I just started tweeting about it. And then somebody hit me up on Twitter and started asking me all these questions. And they were like, "You're the only one who's tweeting about it." So, and I was like, "All right." So I just started kind of running this live tweet. And so
that's
when the
awesome.
figures came out, they were I forget what it is now, but they were able to identify it for me. I posted up on Twitter right away, and in 2 seconds, someone was like, "That's a such and such." And I was like, "All right, cool," because I have no idea what this stuff is.
I and I need to crack that open with our gaming group because we have a lot of people who would be real into that. And I just got a new game table like earlier in December.
You have one of the
Uh,
fancy ones, one of those like
yeah, I
it's like
backed it on
felt and
Kickstarter.
oh, nice.
The Origins game table, and so I backed it on Kickstarter. My wife and I had been wanting to get a game table for a while, and it's great. It got delivered, but I'm like, gotta break it in with a good solid game
Absolutely.
like that. But we do for our weekly RPG. We have people all over the country. We have someone out in Colorado. We have someone up in Michigan. We used to bring someone in from Georgia. So we have people all over the country, and we have a bunch of people who sit around my table already. So we just need to
How
make
do you
sure that we
integrate
can.
all those together? Do you use like a Roll20 or something, or
Yeah,
what do
we
you
do.
use?
We use Roll20, and it's funny. We found out that if we use Roll20 and we're also using the video streaming on Roll20, Roll20 does not like it.
Right,
Um,
I've heard. I've
so
heard.
we use
Discord has really blown
yeah,
up because of that, because everyone just goes to Discord for the video.
we use Zoom. We have a wedding Zoom account already, so we just log into that and just and watch that. That's the thing. Like I never would have gotten a Zoom account, and then the pandemic happened. I'm like, I still need to do business. Like I got to figure it out. So, um, yeah, but it worked out for us. But we just need to find a time to say, okay, well, when can we play Gloomhaven? And again, I wish we had more hours in the day.
Well,
My wife loves. You were talking about
yeah,
what games we have. Wingspan and Everdell. Like
yeah.
I
I
could be
haven't
like,
played Everdell. Everdell looks beautiful. We have Wingspan. I got my cousin into Wingspan, and he is now like a Wingspan junkie. He
oh yeah,
plays the solo mode like just about maybe not every night, but every other night. Everywhere he goes, he basically brings that box with him. I mean, he will call me and we'll spend 45 minutes just talking Wingspan strategies with
oh my
me.
gosh.
He is like super into it. I got him Fantastic Factories for Christmas,
Mm,
which is a really good game. I feel like I could get my daughter into it, but I was trying to introduce him to kind of some similar but different mechanics because he likes the whole sort of you're setting up that tableau with your birds. But
yep.
now with Fantastic Factories, you're doing something similar, but there's a dice rolling mechanic where you're placing dice in the various kind of cards you're building that will
Hmm.
can kind of generate resources or points for you. So I'm trying to kind of get them on there. But yeah, Wingspan, and I've told pretty much everyone who will listen. Wingspan is not maybe not a perfect game, but as far as something that has that table presence, can be appealing to people who are not necessarily hardcore gamers. You're not, you're not you're not a baron in 14th century Austria, right? So
Right. Well,
it's something everybody. It appeals to just about everybody. The pieces are beautiful. I
yeah.
think it's fairly simple to play, but it has a lot of strategy. It's not like stupid simple to play.
Well, I think they came out with that.
You know,
They came out with the promo pack that is like, hey, do you want to teach people how to play Wingspan? Use these cards. This walks you through your first turn. I think first 2 turns, and it's like, there you go. That's how you play Wingspan, and it's great. And we've just taken that and we've merged all of those cards into our set. It's like the one game that we've really like took to the limit. Like we went to Meeple Source and got like all the new birds or whatever. So we have like specialized bird tokens, and we have little actual bird nests that my wife got at a craft store.
oh wow.
It's just it's ridiculous. But
Yeah, I feel like Etsy exploded with Wingspan stuff pretty much
yeah,
right away.
with Wingspan stuff and actually Everdell stuff. They actually apparently some of the Etsy shops for Everdell had to get shut down because they were doing they were going to make their own little token holders and stuff like that. So, but no, Everdell is another one of those
Oh,
games.
they trespassed a little bit too. They came too
Bit
close to
too
the sun.
much. Yeah.
I understand that, but yeah, it's pretty neat what people do. Well, listen,
Yeah.
you've been on well past time.
No,
I mean, I could go all day, but
right.
I'm
You just
cognizant of other
talking to me
people's.
about board games and RPGs. I'm like, well, that's fine. Let's go.
Yeah, I know. But hey, I always tell folks, the kind folks in my community, that there are probably going to be those days where I'm going to talk about stuff that interests me. I hope it interests you, but if it doesn't, I'm going to go with what interests me. So skip ahead, wait for the next one, whatever. But I really appreciate coming on. Hopefully, maybe, I'd love to have you guys on again, or if you want to bring someone
Absolutely.
else in the team on or do anything,
Yeah.
you're welcome. It just kind of let me know. Like I said, if you have anything, so there's a private chat, which I think you used accidentally before. That other chat where you said thanks to Matthias, who we couldn't see because it's in the private chat window. Or you can use the thing on. I was just gonna say, if you want to send me any links, maybe I should go back with them and think. If you want to send me any links, I can throw the. If you have one of those Kickstarter coming soon pages or GameFound coming soon pages, whatever you're using for the doggos thing, just send it to me because I can add it to the descriptions and stuff wherever that all that good stuff. Thanks everybody for hanging out and game on, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Thanks so much.